You ever watch a Friday the 13th movie and think, you know what, I like these, but they could do with more heart? And by heart, I mean the emotional kind, not like the physical kind, like the one in Jason Goes to Hell that one dude eats and then it crawls out of his neck because it's like kind of some like weird demon baby thing or something. Jason Goes to Hell is a weird ass movie. Anyway, that aside for a moment, with Friday the 13th, more heart. Yes, okay, well, have I got a movie for you? Let me introduce you to the wonderfully fun and exceptionally sweet and wholesome The Final Girls. One thing that's been really great about this marathon for me is not just getting an opportunity to gush about some of my all-time favourite horror movies or shed a new perspective on the genre, but also just to find new movies entirely. Prior to doing this marathon, I had never even heard of Final Girls, let alone seen it. It got added to the list of maybes solely on the basis of its title alone being an acknowledgement of a pre-existing horror trope. That kind of gave me some hope that if I put on the film, it would at least be something meta or subversive. And can I just say, going off that guess, my god was I happy with what followed. This film is fantastic. Add it to my must-watch list of fun horror movies because it is an absolute beaut. Released in 2015 from director Todd Strauss Skulson and starring contemporary Scream Queen and American Horror Story veteran Thaisa Farmiga, who I love by the way, The Final Girls opens rather interestingly not on this movie, but on another movie, Camp Bloodbath. A very, very apparent stand-in for the Friday the 13th series. Like, the writers of this thing could not be more apparent with what they're homaging, and probably definitely would have wanted to actually make this movie an official Friday the 13th product if they thought they could have gotten the rights. Camp Bloodbath is very familiar. A 1984 slasher flick where a bunch of horny teen camp counselors get periodically murdered by a bulking monster of a man in a mask, and always for some reason just after they bone. You know, like that other movie. We then zoom out of Camp Bloodbath, which we realise is being watched on a phone by Thaisa's character Max, who is waiting in the car for her mother Amanda, played by Malin Ackerman, one of the original actresses in Camp Bloodbath, to come back from an audition. When Amanda returns, she laments to Max on how the casting crew recognised her from Camp Bloodbath and how she'll never escape that old role before driving off. As the two goof around and sing Betty Davis's Eyes and the audience get a nice little peek into what looks like a really lovely mother-daughter relationship, Amanda unfortunately crashes the car and Max is the only survivor of this incident. Fast forward to 3 years later, and on the anniversary of her mother's death, Max is still struggling with the grief of her loss and failing school. When her best friend's stepbrother, a massive Camp Bloodbath fan who is hosting back-to-back showings of the first two movies, asks her to come to his screening because if he invites the daughter of one of the original actresses, he'll get major cred with his cult movie buddies. At first resistant, he bribes her with homework aid, so Max goes to the screening with her best friend and a boy who's interested in her, and when arriving, Max's ex-best friend turns out to also be at the screening. After all these major characters are introduced and sit down for the movie, an accidental fire erupts in the cinema halfway through the showing. Looking for an escape, Max picks up a prop machete a fan had brought along with them and dropped in the panic, and cuts through the projector screen, hoping to find a way out for her and all of her friends. As they go through the screen though, instead of finding an exit, they all wake up in the movie Camp Bloodbath, occupying the same space as all of its fictional characters, including the murderous monster man Billy Murphy, and, arguably even more importantly, Max's dead mother. This film is wildly inventive. It's almost like this surreal Groundhog Day experience that acts not only as a love letter to 80s teen slasher movies, but also a clever subversion of one. The mechanics of the movie within the movie and the way the whole world works are super interesting. I love how the characters who are aware they're in the film can see things like the credits and the timestamps and can hear the killer's little leitmotif. Speaking of which, if you ever needed any more proof that this is a Friday the 13th homage...
What is that noise?
It's Billy. He's coming.
Let's get out of here then.
No, stay. Stay.
I love it. Because our protagonists are aware of how this world works and the rules it follows, they're able to advance the would-be predictable plot in new and unexpected ways. Only the final virgin girl can destroy the monster in the end? Let's be sure to keep her alive. Killer only comes out when the nudity hits? Well, let's make sure no one has sex. a harder task than you'd think considering the near brain-dead nature of some of the counsellors. Amongst all the clever and innovative action that plays with the slasher formula, there's a really strong emotional core, with Max's main arc focusing on her getting over her grief by getting to interact with this facsimile of her mother once again, and, perhaps if she's lucky, even save her from her inevitably scripted fate. The stuff with Max and her not-quite mother is really engaging. I anticipated when coming into this movie that I'd maybe be in for the ride of a fun, kind of quirky horror movie, but I did not expect to be as taken in with the mother-daughter aspect of the narrative. But I was invested. I already got a pretty good vibe off the movie from its fun characters, homages and snappy dialogue in the opening, but when Max first sees her mother again and her eyes glass over with tears, I was like, oh, this movie's gonna make me feel things. And feel things I definitely did. I don't want to spoil any more than I have to. I already feel like I've given too much away just saying they get sucked into the Camp Bloodbath film. Granted, since that's literally the core concept, it's probably in all the marketing material and the trailers, and it's hard to talk about the film without mentioning it, but I'd go in as blind as you can with this one. All I'll say is that to me, it is near perfect in what it sets out to do. I have literally only a single complaint, and that's that there's this one character, Tina, who is so fucking annoying. Like, don't get me wrong, the actress is doing a really great job. I am not knocking her at all. She's giving it the beans in her performance. I mean, she's got a dance scene that is so good, she almost won me over with just how ridiculous, energetic and fun it was. But otherwise, the characterization of her is like the human equivalent of nails on a chalkboard. I get that's the point. She's supposed to be an obnoxious airhead, but the actress is too good at her job. This character irritates the hell out of me. Other than that though, I have nothing bad to say about this thing. In fact, I'm surprised I didn't hear about this movie way sooner because, quite frankly, it has massive cult hit written all over it. The action's intense, it's super funny at times, it can even be really quite scary. Like, there's a scene where one of the protagonists is convinced Billy won't hurt him because he's not part of the original script, and as he explains this to the other characters, Billy just stands looming over him in the background for like a good solid minute or two, just completely unmoving while he's having this conversation. And even without the traditional horror score that would normally accompany something like this, his presence against this character's self-assuredness just made me so fucking nervous. Like, dude, don't count on that. I'm not so sure you're correct in those assumptions there. But its biggest crowning achievement is just that it's really quite lovely. I cannot undersell that aspect of it. This film catapulted itself into my all-time favourites when it absolutely knocked me for 6 with how meaningful the mother-daughter narrative was. The idea of this girl getting one last chance to say goodbye, or maybe even save the woman she's been grieving for years, set against the backdrop of all this terror, is breathtakingly well handled. Honestly, it might even be a bit of a tearjerker for some people. And by some people I do mean me, it was a tearjerker for me. Horror with heart, man. You absolutely love to see it. Unless the heart gets eaten and then crawls out of someone's neck. Jason Goes to Hell was a really weird movie and I'm honestly still not over it. Subscribe to my OnlyDans and I'll see you for tomorrow's video. Fucking weird movie.